life is just a series of projects, and that project mindset becomes not only like addicting in some ways, but actually fundamentally, it is the reason that I'm climbing.
Alex, I feel like so far this year we've talked about this multiple times, but 2025 is shaping up to be this kind of like banner year for outdoor climbing. It feels like in some ways it also is marking the ascension of a younger generation, or like that it's kind of complete.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, so far in the first half of 2025, we've had Brooke Rabitou climb 15C, the hardest grade for a woman so far. We've had Hamish MacArthur climbing V17 in a single session in a few hours, which is so amazing. Climbing the hardest bouldering grade in the world in a few hours. We've had Will Moss flashing El Cap in a day, sending the free rider in a day. I mean, yeah, and then plenty of other incredible achievements from all kinds of people.
Can you remember any other year quite like this?
I forget which year it was, but like Adam flashing 15A first time, I mean, that was a few years ago where I was like, oh, that's crazy. To me, that felt like a real change.
Yeah.
Because I remember when Chris, climbed biography as the first 515 in the world. And then, it's not that much longer. Somebody flashes 515 for the first time. And you're like, wow, standards have really changed.
I feel like it must be incredible to be a part of what's happening at the moment. And today we sit down with someone who is the center of this generational movement, Katie Lamb.
Yeah, for the past few years, Katie Lamb has been feasting on some of the world's most difficult boulder problems. If you look at her 8A or her Instagram or whatever, it's just like a nonstop stream of like some random V14, like all these hard boulders all over North America, basically. But she first appeared on the broader climbing radar in 2023 when she sent box therapy in Rocky Mountain National Park, and headlines appeared that she became the first woman to climb V16. But then later that year, the problem got downgraded.
This year, Lamb broke through again, climbing the dark side in Yosemite, becoming the first woman, actually I should say again, becoming the first woman to climb the grade. It all underscored something that everyone who's been lucky and committed enough to be at the cutting edge of our sport knows. And that's, in the end, the grades, like, they don't really matter that much. It's about the effort that you've given. Whether that's to a big wall, a 70-meter pitch, or a 10-foot section of rock that, like, to most people, looks completely blank and impossible.
I'm Alex Honnold.
I'm Fitzco Hall.
This is Climbing Gold.
Hi, my name is Katie. I'm a rock climber, and I live in Berkeley, California. I'm primarily a boulderer these days. I've been climbing since I was about 7 years old. My brother and parents got into it, and eventually I started climbing as well. I was sort of dragged to the gym before I actually had the attention span to do any sort of climbing. And then I got pretty hooked, and we still climb as a whole family. I grew up sport climbing, actually, in Rumney, New Hampshire, and then moved to California in 2016 and have been based in California mostly since then, primarily bouldering.
Why do you live in Berkeley for outdoor rock climbing?
I like the people. I have a lot of friends here. And
But what about the rocks?
Mortar Rock.
I know, but Mortar's so grim.
That's my spot.
If that's is that really your spot?
No.
You just train in the gym?
Yeah, I just train in the gym. But it's within striking distance to all the good climbing.
Well, pretty long strikes though.
Yeah, but you adjust.
With heinous traffic.
Well, I don't need to adhere to traffic hours. Yeah, it's not ideal. I mean, you know the deal. It's actually really hard to get within striking distance of Yosemite without actually living in Yosemite. So Berkeley's about as close as you can be. I guess there's Fresno, but I have more friends in Berkeley, so.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Fresno isn't exactly a great home base for a climber either.
No, definitely not.
But so is Yosemite your main bouldering destination? I mean, do you want to live within striking distance of Yosemite?
Oh, I'd love to live within Yosemite if it was a possibility, but the real estate market over there is tough. So yeah,
and the living situation is tough.
And the living situation, yeah. So yeah, I mean, Yosemite is my home area, I guess, even though it's 3.5 hours away. Home crag.
And so why are you a boulder?
That's a good question. I think These days, I actually really struggle with the concept of sport climbing in a way that I don't think I ever did as a kid. I feel like I've developed this purist tendency that it's hard to return to sport climbing. I think the natural progression after bouldering for me would be single pitch trad, actually. And I like how distilled bouldering is. I think the lines are really inspiring. I like problem solving. I like that I can do it alone or I can do it with a group of friends. And I have a lot of friends who boulder. And I like the places it takes me. Like, I haven't felt like I needed to branch out because I've felt like really entertained by my options in bouldering. But I think eventually I will feel a draw to probably single pitch trad and then not single pitch trad and then maybe eventually sport climbing. Yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
You're gonna circle back around to sport climbing in retirement.
I don't know. I really struggle with it right now as a discipline. No offense to sport climbers, but I could see myself getting into it. Yeah, like in well down the line.
Is that partially because you do so much climbing in Yosemite and you're just surrounded by the most striking walls on Earth? You're kind of like, why go sport climbing when you can either climb these cool rocks or these giant walls?
Kind of, I think. Although I've actually had a lot of fun sport climbing in Yosemite. Like, I understand that it's really fun, but to me it feels like much closer to the gym. It feels more like play than work. And I think I just really like the idea of like starting at the bottom and getting to the top with like minimal evidence that you were ever there.
So soloing is next for you?
I mean, that would be the logical next progression if I was a lot braver.
Would you even need to be braver? Because actually, I kind of feel like a lot of bouldering,
yeah, totally,
is like so close to soloing,
right?
Or I think that hard bouldering and certainly obscure bouldering or first ascent bouldering or like getting off the beaten path of boulders is much closer to the free soloing experience than anything else in rock climbing.
Definitely.
You know, it's like when you're on some mossy slab and you're sort of like, oh God, like I'm questing to the top of this boulder. It's like, I mean, that's feels just like free soloing, like random terrain.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, it is free soloing.
It is. Yeah. I mean, I've definitely been in like many scenarios where I feel like I'm absolutely free soloing. Like if I fell, I would likely get injured or die.
Yeah. Catastrophically injured. Yeah.
Like get injured to the point where I wouldn't be climbing after that. And yeah, I mean, honestly, I do kind of enjoy that headspace. Like when it's really controlled and it's like really high stakes, but I don't feel afraid. So I totally see the appeal of free soloing. I think actually taking that next step feels potentially not worth it to me when like I have that feeling, but it comes tied with like doing a really inspiring boulder or something. Like I've actually never quite had that like final step to being like, oh, I want to free solo that instead of do it on gear or something.
Let's get into hard bouldering. I mean, you're basically the strongest boulder in the world, depending how you look at it, depending how you. I mean, I know you wouldn't say that. Nobody would ever say that. But well, what is it fair to say? I mean, you're the first woman to climb V16 twice, depending on how you look at it, right?
Yeah.
Or is that that's true?
I don't know if it's binary true or not. I think there's a spectrum of truths.
Yeah. Okay. But so. You have climbed many of the, actually, okay, this is definitely true. You have climbed many of the hardest boulders in the world.
Yeah, I would say so, although not as many as other people.
Yeah, but that's true for everybody, because even those other people who have climbed a lot would be like, well, they're not as good as their friends either. You know what I mean? Like nobody feels like they're that good.
Yeah.
Because the both the beauty and the bummer of climbing is there's always some 11-year-old who's about to flash your project and you're like, oh man.
Yeah.
It's like,
I would say I'm not as well traveled as some other boulders, I think.
But you have done a tremendous amount of hard bouldering.
Yeah, I've done a lot of bouldering.
What is it about the most difficult boulders in the world that attract you? Like talk about that singular draw to intense difficulty.
Yeah, I like the feeling of when I didn't think that something was possible, and then all of a sudden there's like this light bulb moment where it becomes possible, and it's like it's not exactly a paradigm shift, but feels like I'm learning something about myself, or that like I'm proving something to myself that there is this divide between who I was before when I didn't think it was possible and who I was after when I knew it to be possible. And I don't know, I think that's cliche, but I think that moment is actually much more satisfying than like sending something itself. And yeah, life is just a series of projects, and like that project mindset becomes not only like addicting in some ways, but actually like fundamentally it is the reason that we are like or that I'm climbing. And I feel like with bouldering, that's presented itself to me like most handily. Like that project mentality feels like most available through bouldering.
Talk about that project mindset more. I mean, I think that's kind of interesting. I mean, what do you mean that life is a series of projects?
Like, obviously, I do a boulder, and that's not like the end all be all of my climbing. Like, I know that I will once more feel the pull to like do another boulder, and the cycle will restart. And so I'm not like naive to the fact that there might be that like doing the dark side, for example, is like the crowning moment of bouldering for me. Everyone feels like, oh, I like my life depends on doing this boulder in the moment, and then you do it, and then you restart the cycle. And so really coming to terms with the fact that like the cycle, the project itself is what we're here to do has been a key, moment of progression, I think, for me mentally in my climbing.
You just said my life depends on doing the boulder. I'm like, is that the intensity that it takes to boulder at this level? It's like, is that honestly this like cycle of projecting? I was like, does it feel like your whole life is like, I have to do this boulder?
I mean, kind of.
Because I've never bouldered hard. With that said, I'm kind of like, maybe that's why I've never bouldered hard. Because I'm like, oh my God, that's what one of my friends calls psycho psyched. You know, it's like, oh, I'm so psyched. I'm going to try that hard. It's like, is that what it takes to boulder V15, V16? Like, I mean, and that's the beauty of climbing is that any project that you're fixated on, you have something to fixate on. Where like my whole life revolves around this thing that I'm working on. I like train, I diet, I do whatever, all the things. I sleep well. I like take care of my skin and I care. And then I try really, really hard for long periods of time. And then eventually I see this thing through to the end. And yeah, whether that's free soloing some big wall or climbing a very, very hard boulder is like either way, it gives your life focus and purpose and, like something to work on. And I mean, this is why I keep asking about hard bouldering. I'm like, but, like why is it hard bouldering that sucked you in like that? Because I mean, there are a handful of folks who are really into the high level bouldering. I mean, I guess nowadays there are more people who are into hard bouldering than other disciplines of climbing maybe. But to me, it just seems less obvious. You know what I mean? Like big walls, I feel like are just slightly more inspiring in a way, like for me personally. Also, hard bouldering is so heinous. Hard bouldering is so painful and sharp. And like I mean, the dark side specifically, it's like that thing is heinous. Like it seems so gross.
You're drawing so many parallels to like big walling. Not that I've ever really done it. Like it is big walling distilled. Like, obviously, I agree with you. You drive into Yosemite and like El Cap is the one, right? Like I do feel inspired by El Cap. But also like I think you stand under King Air and I personally felt like I felt something. Like there's a mysticism to it.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you're like, this is incredible and I want to like stand on the bottom and then climb it with like out any aid and stand on the top. And I think at its essence, like that is what bouldering to me feels about. And I think I like the suffering. And I think I am a little bit drawn to the suffering in a way that I think would translate really well to big wall climbing, like in a later time. So yeah, it is a suffering too. That's like part of the appeal.
Can you just break down the dark side for us?
Yeah.
Like what is it?
So the dark side's on the same boulder as the Force and Thriller,
which are two of the most iconic boulders in Yosemite.
Yeah, right in Camp 4. Super flat landing, big boulder. It starts on a rail on the left side of the boulder, and you do 2 easier moves into like a crimp crux move. And so you lock off on a crimp. It's like maybe a quarter or half pad, pretty sharp. You lock off on that crimp and you get right hand on the sloper rail. And then you do maybe 10 tiny moves on the sloper rail. And then you do a crimpy outro. And then you finish on the same place as the Force. So it kind of breaks into 3 sections, the crimp section, the sloper section, and then the outro crimps.
And so is it 15 or 20 moves total?
Yeah, probably. Maybe closer to 20.
And so what makes it V16? I'm asking, like actually asking, because it's so heinous. Like if you just look at it, you're like, well, that doesn't go. And I mean, and I've been climbing Yosemite long enough to remember that as a long-standing open project is like, oh, somebody chalked those slopers. What a joke. Like it looks completely impossible.
Yeah.
And certainly when you compare it to the Force or Thriller, which are right next to it and are super famous and, everybody climbs those all the time. when you look to the left and you look at the dark side, you're like, well, that's in a totally different category. You know, it's like the holds are seemingly non-existent. Everything about it is just insane looking.
Mm-hmm. I think what makes it V16 is probably just how subtle it is. Like, I think the way that I think about it, it's like doing Jade, which is like a really test piece, crimpy one move V14. It's like doing Jade into a really low probability friction dependent sloper exit. And so it really is about...
And how hard's the sloper exit?
It's probably pretty hard. It's really hard to grade by itself. If I had to give it a grade, I'd give it in V14 probably, from like the start of the sloper to topping out the boulder. And it's a little bit weird because by the time that I was like actually ready, or by the end of my time on the dark side, when I was giving it goes from the bottom, I could do the sloper section almost every time that I pulled on. But it took me like 20 sessions to get to that point where I had it on lock. And so it's kind of one of those bouldering grades where all of the work that goes into doing the boulder feels like it factors pretty heavily into the grade. And then actually climbing it from start to finish doesn't feel physically that hard.
Well, that's a classic climbing experience that when you finally do something, you're like, well, it's not that hard, but I just spent like half my life working on it. So you're sort of like, oh, maybe it is hard. So how many sessions did you put on the boulder total?
I would probably say between 20 and 25. There was a few sessions where I like showed up and either the sloper felt so bad that it was not worth trying, or like I had this kind of bad shoulder tendonitis at the end. So there's a few sessions I would like show up and warm up and realize my shoulder hurt too much. So 20 to 25 probably.
Did you ultimately do it with the shoulder hurting? You just like found your day?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
That's a good effort. That's always tough when you're like threading the needle on injury stuff, when you're like, oh, my body is just like struggling.
Yeah, my body was definitely ready to finish up the season.
Yeah. And so you just did that this season, right? When did you send?
End of March, 2025.
Did you feel the pressure of like it's getting hot and the season's winding down?
Definitely, yeah. The day that I did it was like probably 60 degrees in Camp 4, which is pretty warm. That's kind of like the end of the bouldering season. It's buggy and warm and sunny in Camp 4. Yeah, most of my sessions in Camp 4 is probably in the 40s.
Wow. But the 60-degree attempts, did that help or did that hurt?
I think it helped.
Because you never know with some of that stuff. Because, I mean, sometimes you don't numb out on the crimps and you feel like a little tackier on the slope. Like, yeah.
Yeah, every time that I'd fallen, like every time that I'd gotten through the sloper previously, so I fell twice in the outro crimps.
Oh, wow.
And it was because I was numb. So I think it probably did help.
Yeah, that's cool. So, I mean, that makes you the first woman to climb V16? With this boulder? I mean, but you were already the first woman to climb V16 with box therapy. Can we talk about that? I mean, what like tell us about box therapy and what happened with that boulder.
Yeah, so I did box therapy in July 2023. I'd been living in Colorado for a couple months, and I've actually done like 3 or 4 summers in Colorado bouldering in the Alpine there. And I kind of came into the summer with the intention of doing it. And I actually did it relatively quickly and had, a pretty amazing experience just hiking up there at 6 miles in. And kind of like having this intentional, focused time really deep in the Alpine for me, at least, pretty deep to be bouldering. I did a few sessions that were like kind of completely alone. And so it was this feeling of like self-sufficiency and almost like survival in the mountains that was pretty rare and unique, at least in my bouldering experience. I think it also like kind of catalyzed this feeling that I could actually be a lot more adventurous and a lot more ambitious in my bouldering. And I don't know if that's really something that like most high-level boulders like ever really get to experience. Oftentimes it can feel like the harder you boulder, the less adventure there really is. And the more like focused you are on whatever roadside boulder is next.
It's funny you say that though, because I've actually always kind of had a personal feeling that the more elite you get as a boulder, the closer you get to being an ultra runner or something. You know, it's like, because all these like hardcore boulders are freaking walking all over the place looking for boulders. And you're talking about 12 miles of hiking to go try one rock in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And you're just like by yourself out there doing solo sessions. I was like, in a way, that's kind of crazy. You know, it's like not that many people do that in their climbing experience. That's like pretty hardcore.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting because so many people make fun of bouldering. It's like, oh, you know, bouldering, it's like so light duty. But I'm kind of like, I don't know. That's as adventurous as it gets in climbing when you hike 6 miles in the middle of nowhere, try as hard as you can by yourself until you're totally exhausted and then stagger back to your car.
Totally.
You're like, that's a big outing.
I mean, I think a lot of people do end up there with their bouldering of just like, oh, actually walking further is fine and maybe adds to the experience. But it does feel a little bit silly to like walk 6 miles, like kind of like prep for a big alpine day and then just like go sit under a boulder and like, I don't know.
Crimp as hard as you can for 18 seconds and then look at your tips for like 20 minutes and then try it again.
Exactly.
But so at the time, what did it mean for you? You know, how did it feel to be the first woman to climb V16 when you did box therapy?
Yeah, I think maybe like naively, I felt like pretty unprepared for like what meaning people would derive from that. I think when one is like sort of amongst the scene or like kind of in the high level bouldering game, it can feel like the grades actually become a bit more arbitrary. Like everybody's kind of like talking amongst themselves, and to the general public, like V16 really feels like something different. And I think naively, I wasn't expecting this to like feel like as big a moment as it became. And I was like much more low key, I think, 2 years ago. And it was just kind of this moment of stepping into the limelight.
So what happened?
Okay, so what happened? So I did the boulder in July 2023. In like September 2023, I went back to California and was like, okay, I think I should probably share about this, and made my Instagram post, which I guess is breaking the news these days. Funny enough, I had been sort of talking to Brooke and Sean Rabbitooth when I was in Colorado that summer, but they were not there when I was there. We just were ships in the night. So we hadn't actually tried it together, but had just been discussing logistics in beta. And so there was also kind of this interesting moment where like I knew that they were trying, and I kind of thought everybody else like knew that they were trying. I don't know. The timing was weird because then Brooke and Sean did it maybe a couple of weeks after I had made my Instagram post, and they called it V15, and it sort of like ignited this big dispute about like intention and grades, and people really wanted to derive a truth from the whole situation. Like, has a woman climbed to V16 or no? Like, what is the answer? When I think, yeah, looking back, truth is not so binary, and maybe we see that more. I don't know. I think there's a lot of examples where like truth feels like it is on a spectrum and there are multiple truths that can exist at the same time. Not really thinking in a climbing lens right now, but yeah.
And so how'd that feel for you? I mean, you know, basically like stirred up a bunch of drama.
Yeah.
Like how did that affect your experience having climbed the route?
It was interesting because I had such a good experience with the boulder, and I felt kind of like empowered by the boulder actually in my own climbing. Like it was sort of like, wow, I like walked out to this random piece of rock 6 miles in, and like I did that for myself. It was sort of like the feeling I had. And people really wanted, I think, to like push this narrative that I had done it to be the first woman to climb V16, and then had like suffered the consequences from taking that on as an ambition, which was absolutely like not the narrative that I had in my mind. And so it was just kind of my first moment of like having like a public opinion pushed onto me. And it felt in some ways like I felt sad that people felt like there was like malicious intent from like Brooke and Sean, and because I had never like felt that myself from them. And I think for me, there was just a process of like coming to terms with it being okay that public opinion differs from my own opinion of other people and my own opinion of myself, and like being okay with creating a separate experience from like the experience that people had took from me sharing, and they really ran with it, and that's okay.
Yeah. So now 2 years later, looking back on it, does it change your experience with the route? Like how do you feel about the whole journey?
I think for a while I had a pretty like bad relationship with that boulder in particular. Not like, you know, there's like juju around certain areas or boulders, but it sort of feels like there's a little bit of like lore in my mind about certain pieces of rock. And now I feel like grateful for the experience, having come like all the way to the end with it. And Like, it is actually super crazy that I walked so many miles and like was just like committing myself to like go and do that boulder. And like, I feel like impressed with myself for having taken on that as a project, which I think is like closer to where I felt having in 2023, having just done the boulder and not really had a backlash about it. So I feel pretty good about it right now.
What's your honest take on the grades? I mean, and this is the funny thing that I think is interesting about public back and like comments on the internet about grades is that, actually, do you know how many, like, you've done so many double-digit boulder problems, like how many established 14s and 15s have you done?
Probably 20-ish.
And so, to you, did it feel like V16? Like, did it feel harder than, most of the 15s you've done, or?
It definitely felt physically harder than any of the 15s I've done, but I don't know. I mean, the thing is the style is really good for me.
You mean that problem suits you really well?
Yeah. Like that box therapy is a much better stylistically boulder for me than some of the other like 14s I've done or 15s I've done. I mean, it definitely took more of an effort than any other 15 or 14 that I've done. Yeah, I mean, it's funny with the dark side because the dark side is physically much easier, but took more from me.
We'll be back with more after the break. I don't know if it's worth we could have a whole riff on Never Stop Exploring because I do honestly joke about Never Stop Exploring all the time. And like with J-Star the other day at the Crag, I was like joking about Never Stop Exploring.
What do you mean?
Well, I just joke that if I ever stop exploring, I'll get fired. Like I love going to new places, doing new things, trying new ways, like, even like small scale exploration within your backyard, even like trying a new trail to the Crag, things like that. Just like I see that all as exploration. And I do think that after 20 years of consistently joking about how I should always be exploring, I think it has made me more of an explorer. It's like you fake it till you make it. It's like I just keep saying, don't stop exploring. And then eventually you're like, you know what? I think I am kind of an explorer.
Yeah. I mean, I know what I love about like that sort of like curiosity, but like what works for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think curiosity is exactly the word. I mean, I think that the idea never stop exploring gives you permission to ask questions about the world, to try new things nonstop, to like always be pushing in interesting ways. I just think that that's the best way to interact with the world. If you want to start your exploration, go to thenorthface.com.
That would be so funny if you like send in your resignation. I'm done exploring.
Well, dude, eventually I'll get too tired. I'm gonna post something on social, be like, after 25 good years, I'm tired of exploring. Now I'm just gonna sit on my sofa and watch Netflix.
Somehow I don't see that happening. What's June's favorite breakfast?
June freaking loves frozen waffles. And I guess it powers her up, though she's pretty powerful either way.
Dude, I have all these memories of like, I grew up in Florida for like chunks of it, and it'd be so hot in the house, and just like opening up the freezer and like looking at the frozen waffles and being like, I want that, but I also want this freezer door open.
I mean, when June, half the time she doesn't close the freezer, so she opens the freezer, opens the drawer, pulls the box out, sometimes drops the whole box on the floor, and you're sort of like, oh, we got bared. It looks like a bear just came in and ripped the place apart to get their Kodiak cake.
Oh, parenthood.
That's the June's approach. I love that she's just savage. I mean, June does love the blueberry. I mean, I think combining 100% whole grains with more protein keeps you feeling fuller for longer, which is honestly great for the kids at breakfast time. I think June feels like she's getting a special treat, and it's so fun for her, and yet she actually is pretty full afterward, and it lasts, and she doesn't bonk, and it's kind of perfect. Keep your wild ones going with a protein-packed breakfast that will keep them fueled for big days. Find Kodiak products at your local grocery store. They're the ones with the bear on the box. Or learn more at kodiakcakes.com. I don't know if we'll end up using this, but I'm kind of curious, like, let's just go deep on grades and consensus stuff like that. Do you mind, what are your dimensions? Like, how tall are you, and like what kind of reach do you have?
Yeah, I'm 5'5", and I have a even or minus half-inch wingspan, so I have pretty short arms. I feel short in my span, but I mean, I like 3 inches in bouldering is like a huge difference, even in height, like tip to toe.
And part of the reason I'm curious about your perspective on grades like this is that I've been really thinking about this a lot, because I am having an experience that I've never really had before, in that I'm climbing a cliff where the first ascensionists are all short, basically. And so I've been doing second ascents of routes that were put up by people who are like 5'5", 5'6", who are very strong in specific ways. but basically all the holds are freaking wrong for me. Like I don't fit any of the boxes. And everything I'm trying, I'm like, oh, the ticked feet don't work for me. Like the foot that was glued to like keep it, it's like kind of Chaucy limestone. Like basically the glued things don't work for me. And I'm like finding totally new sequences, totally different things. And I'm just like, the grades like don't mean that much to me in some ways. Cause I'm like, this just doesn't fit at all. Like I can't stand on the foot. Like this is driving me crazy. And it made me realize that this is the experience that shorter people probably have, 90% of the time on established routes where they're just like, oh, I don't fit the box right. Like this is so annoying. And I was like, oh, because I'm like a totally average, actually I'm probably I'm like 5'11" with like a +3. And so I'm like kind of just a big climber. And I almost never, like I pretty much always fit the box. I was like pretty average sized man climbing on routes that are normally set by, average sized dudes. I'm kind of like, it's interesting to be climbing a cliff where I'm like, I just don't fit anything. And it had been kind of driving me crazy where I was like, oh, why does it always feel wrong? And now I'm just kind of like, you know what? I just have to take each route as my own experience. I'm just like finding a totally different way on every problem.
Yeah, I mean, that's like kind of my experience with climbing in general. Like,
that's why I think it's kind of interesting is that I think that I've never, I've always like known that like shorter climbers come up with their own methods and whatever, but I've never really experienced it like, physically where I'm like, oh, I'm the guy that doesn't fit for once. And I'm like, oh, it's so annoying.
It's arguably more fun though. Like I feel grateful for it, I think. Kind of everything's your own world.
Yeah, well, totally. It just forces you to have a different experience with climbing to some extent. You just have to take it all. And I think that it means that the grades just mean a lot less.
Definitely.
Because you realize that it's all consensus. It's just like an average of everybody's opinion. And that's why it's so interesting to have all the internet drama around like, well, did she do this or did she do that? And you're like, well, you guys go out and climb it and then you can all vote. And like, when you've done 20 V15s, you can decide if you think it's harder or not. But it's like, who cares?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think ultimately, like, you have to reach the opinion that, like, grades are a consensus and it's the council of your peers that are weighing in on what a grade is. And I like the idea that, like, grades are objective and experiences are subjective. And a grade doesn't point to your experience. It points to, like, the consensus experience, I guess, on a piece of rock. But, like, your personal experience is actually totally separate from the grade itself.
And yet being the first to climb a grade does sort of leave a mark on climbing to some extent. I mean, you're still the first woman to climb B16, and surely that does matter to you, right? I mean, you care about that, and you obviously put a lot of effort into climbing the dark side. So, I mean, talk about that a little bit, because, even with the most personal motivations and sort of intrinsic, like, I just want to climb this rock, but it's like, I mean, like for me, free soloing El Cap, I'm like, obviously you're drawn to it because it's incredible, but you're also like, this will be the freaking coolest thing ever. Like nobody's done it. It's rad. It's like I have the opportunity to. Can you talk a little bit about those types of motivations?
I actually think that free soloing El Cap is like the ultimate like pinnacle of the argument of like how intrinsic motivation interacts with extrinsic motivation, but and how they're like totally inseparable and not like. Yeah, in some ways, obviously, free soloing El Cap is going to make your career. Like, you're going to be famous. You're going to win an Oscar, whatever. Like, that's really hard to separate.
Nobody guessed that we'd win an Oscar,
okay,
but that was a lucky bonus. But yeah, no, definitely, that it's going to be like make you successful.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're like, but look at that rock. It's so cool. It's like, it's incredible.
I mean, if I were to try to free solo El Cap, I think it would be really hard to pull off unless there was like this deep intrinsic motivation of like, I actually want to I want to solo that. Like, the Oscars are nice, but like, I want to stand on the top.
Yeah.
And so I think like it is absolutely wrong to say like there's no extrinsic motivation for like trying to do the dark side. Like if the dark side was graded V10 and it was just really hard for me, I think I'd probably be less motivated about it.
Yeah, you wouldn't put 25 sessions in. You'd put 3 sessions and you'd be like, that's a 10 that I just don't need to do. You'd be like, it just doesn't fit me.
I'd return every time I warm up in Camp 4 and try for like half an hour or something. Yes.
Totally.
And so, yeah, it's really wrong to say that there's no extrinsic motivation. But I think inherently, like in climbing, in any discipline, to like do it at the top level, there has to be kind of like this burning desire to actually do it for yourself and to do it for like to put aside to put aside the extrinsic motivation and to like tap into why like you yourself really want to do something and why like it feels inspiring to you because of the line or because of like what it would represent in the progression of my own climbing. And like all those factors kind of like come together. And I think like, yeah, keep me coming back to the boulder even in the low lows. But yeah, in the back of my mind, definitely like there is kind of this extrinsic like really actually knowing what it would mean to like to the general public to do the boulder.
Yeah. At what point did you kind of realize that you were in a position to sort of leave a mark on bouldering in that way? You know, I mean, was box therapy sort of, I mean, how many, you done other first female ascents and maybe, like you did the first female ascent at Spectre, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which I'm like, that to me, I mean, maybe just because when I grew up climbing, but that problem has always represented like the pinnacle of bouldering. It's like so pure, you know, it's like quintessential hard bouldering.
Yeah.
It's like so crazy to me. And maybe just because I've like looked at it and touched it and been like, that is insane. You know, and I remember when it was like first done in whatever, like 2004 or something.
Yeah.
It was like, it's such a crazy boulder. I mean, basically, at what point did you realize that you could impact the sport?
I felt like actually box therapy I did not think would be as like meaningful to people as it really was. And so it was this moment of like, whoa, people care about my climbing, like actually care. And like, you know, in the past it would be like, oh, that's cool. Like someone did Spectre, like someone did Dominator or whatever, women did Dominator. And it didn't feel groundbreaking to me, but.
Had a woman done Dominator before?
No.
Dude, that's heinous too. That's another boulder that I'm like, that's like respect. I didn't know you did that, but I mean, that's not at all surprising to me, but I'm like, that's a boulder. I've never done it. And I'm like, it seems so crazy.
The boulder is boulder.
I just touch the holds every once in a while. I'm like, no, that's like insane.
You can do it. I know you can.
I don't know. I've never tried. But the thing is, I only go bouldering in Camp 4 when it's like 74 degrees out and like after having climbed a big wall. And I'm like, I've never even remotely, but it just seems impossible. But so talk about that. I mean, it's just interesting, you know, you sort of realize that people care about your climbing. I don't mean to like fixate too hard on grades and all that, but I find this stuff interesting because, you know, for any of us, you always know that there are tons of people out there who are better than you. You know, it's like there are plenty of women in the world who probably can boulder harder than you if they try really hard, maybe. You know, or like Yanya, for example, I don't think has ever even tried a B16, has she? She's tried some B17s and like done a B15 in the session but has never left the gym for more than 2 days. You know what I mean? Because she's like so psycho about training. And so you're kind of like, well, presumably she could, but hasn't. But I don't know. But at the same time, that's so much of climbing is like, are you willing to put the work in? Are you willing to actually do the thing?
Yeah, it's like all of climbing.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's interesting for me, or maybe people my size particularly, because like I think being a little bit on the smaller side and being a little bit less powerful than the average male gym climber, like I'll go into the gym any given day and like there'll be like 3 or 4 men that are like actually better at doing gym boulder problems than me. And like that, you know, that's been the case my entire life and I'm not fazed by it. But it is interesting to think about like, oh, like here's my friend who I climb with in the gym who climbs V10 outdoors, but is like actually doing my spray wall projects. Like what actually is the disconnect here? And so much of it is just like understanding how to go outdoor climbing and like making time and like space to do it and giving myself like all the chances. And I think I used to feel like this was kind of like an indication of like my physical weakness in climbing was just like the fact that I was showing up more and that's why I could do harder boulders. But there is just like so much skill baked into outdoor climbing that is like tuned through just like going climbing, and that really can't be understated. Like, and I think the better people get at doing these gym boulder, like board boulders or hangboarding or like all these crazy like one arm things, like the more I think it represents the actual difference between going climbing and training for climbing, and how like at a certain threshold of strength, it doesn't actually really matter. Like you just got to go try.
Yeah. Can you talk about that? I mean, it does feel like we're maybe at a little bit of a moment in climbing where there's like a fork between the elite. I mean, there's the obvious fork between competition climbing, like indoor climbing and outdoor climbing. But even with outdoor climbing, there's kind of like stylistic differences between like parkoury, jumpy things and like pure strength and versus technical. I mean, something like the dark side, which is like definitely not a pure strength boulder. I mean, it doesn't seem like, I don't know anything about it. It just looks impossible, but it doesn't seem like something that a gym bro could pull off. Like no matter how hard you can pull on a one arm edge on a Beastmaker or whatever. I know you posted something recently or maybe not recently because your Instagram is very sparse, but you're doing a coordination thing at Fairhead in Ireland.
Oh yeah.
Like a funny little like
My
double
first
clutch
dyno.
boulder. Yeah, your first double clutch, and you're like, this is my first and my last. And do you feel like there's a real fork there between the sorts of things that people are working on and climbing?
Yeah, okay. So I did a little like just for fun comp in the gym the other day at my local gym. And there was like a finals.
Did you win? I hope you won.
No, I didn't win because there was so many dynos I couldn't do any of them.
You don't practice your box jumps and things? You don't practice your dynos?
The funny thing is I go to the gym and I actually really like trying to do the dynos and I'm like so bad at them. Like I'm just not wired for them, but I really like trying. And like I'm like amazed by how good like the average person is at doing a coordination dyno. I feel like there is like this kind of divide between like you're good at gym style climbing and not even just dynos, like not even crazy coordination dynos, but just like smashing on pinches and like kind of this like super powerful style. I feel like my brain is like not wired for it. Like I try and I really work on it and I don't seem to get better at it. And then I don't think that style really actually translates very well to powerful rock climbing. Like I actually feel okay at powerful rock climbing.
I think to the layperson, they'd be like, well, if you can pull really hard in the gym, you can pull really hard outside. And you feel like that's not true?
I don't think that's true. Like, I don't know why, but I feel like the average gym climber power level, ability level, etc. is like way exceeding me. It's like, getting so much better. But at the same time, I simultaneously feel like my power on rock is keeping up with the mean. And so I think that there's like a divergence.
I think you're way beyond the mean, aren't you? If you're the first woman to climb B16, I think that's sort of by definition, like slightly above average.
Yeah, okay. The mean V15 climber, I guess. Like, I feel like
you've climbed almost every hard boulder in the Western U.S. Basically. I was sort of like, I hope that's a little ways beyond the mean. Like, come on.
Well, okay, but that's a good example. Yeah, sure. I'm an outlier in terms of like outdoor strength or power, but like I'm telling you in the gym, like the average person can do like crazier dynos or pinch boulders or whatever.
Not the average person, but you mean the best?
No, literally. The average person at the gym.
There's no chance. No chance. I don't believe that. I do believe though that like some random gym bro who's really into dynos probably like wildly outperforms you in the gym at certain things.
Like it's crazy. Like I'm sitting there with my mouth open like, whoa, like this random college kid did like this crazy move. Like that's wild. It doesn't feel like to me there's a fork in the road in outdoor climbers. Like I still totally feel like I can translate my ability to like a powerful boulder outside that's maybe not perfectly in my style. I think like in the very upper echelon, like where you're developing 9A or 9A plus, like those people are like choosing something in their style. They're like actually really good at a specific thing. They find a boulder that like speaks to that skill and it's like pretty next level hard, but they happen to be really good at like that specific style. And then I think there does feel like there's a larger divergence between comp climbers, indoor climbing, indoor like random tests of strength, and how that translates to outdoor climbing. Like it feels like people are specializing and diverging away. Like there's less crossover between the people who can like, develop a 9A plus and also do a 300-pound block lift with their fingers. I don't know.
Can people do 300-pound
I don't know,
lifts?
actually. I have no idea.
I was like, oh God. I was like, I need to train. We'll be back with more after the break. Wait, here's going to be my honest take on David bars.
Okay, go for it.
David bars. The packaging looks like straight out of the 90s. Turns out they taste delicious. They have the highest ratio of protein to calories of any bar you can find. You're like, this is fucking space age science food, but it does the one thing it's trying to do really well.
What is the ratio?
Well, 28 grams of protein for a 150 calorie bar. It's like, I mean, that's crazy because most quote unquote protein bars are 20 grams of protein for like a 300 calorie bar. So it's basically like a candy bar with 20 grams of protein in it. Whereas David bar is more protein, fewer calories. And they actually have become my go-to sort of recovery snack because they are really good. And
Do you tuck one in your pack for the hike out?
yeah, I typically take a David bar with me for a day at the crag, or even actually I've been taking on multi-pitch missions, and I tend to favor it for the end of the day or the hike out because it kind of tastes like a treat. So it's nice to save for my last bar of the day. I will say the one thing with the David bar is that it's better viewed as a sort of recovery product than as a technical snack. Because I think for climbers, we often eat bars while adventuring outside. And that's kind of the key thing when you talk about nutrition like this, is that everything has its own time and place. In the same way that you would never eat broccoli on an adventure, even though you definitely want it as part of your healthy life. If you'd like to try David, you can go to davidprotein.com/climbinggold. Again, that's davidprotein.com/climbinggold. If you buy 4 cartons on the website, you get the 5th one free.
I feel like the desert just works me. It drains the water out of me like crazy. How do you stay hydrated?
I think the desert destroys you because you're from the Pacific Northwest, so you're like a plump grape just waiting to get shriveled. But I'm already like a tight little raisin living in the desert, so I think I'm a little bit more heat adapted. I mean, you do physiologically heat adapt a little bit, but then also you just have to be super on top of drinking enough fluids and making sure you get electrolytes. And so when I do big missions in the desert, I do often use LMNT.
Do you see like friends that come visit a lot? Do you see them get just worked?
I was recently hanging out at home, and 3 friends who had been adventuring in Red Rock that had actually been traipsing around in full afternoon sun looking for one of their lost phones on a trail. So they spent hours just walking back and forth in the desert in the sun. They showed up at the house, and I gave them each 2 cans of the LMNT sparkling water, and it seriously looked life-giving. They were so worked and so parched, and they just chugged it. They were like, this is so good. It was like the best thing they'd ever had. I think the LMNT sparkling water is especially good when you're very thirsty.
What makes LMNT different from other electrolyte mixes?
LMNT has way more salt than most mixes. There's also no sugar, but it also has the things you'd expect like potassium and magnesium. So it makes your water delicious, and it has everything you need and nothing that you don't. Get a free 8-count sample pack of LMNT's most popular drink mix flavors with any purchase at drinklmnt.com/climbinggold. That's drinklmnt.com/climbinggold. Find your favorite LMNT flavor or share it with a friend.
Hey everyone, Fitz here. Did you know that you can get Climbing Gold ad-free and support the show? That's right, we now have the unroped option. All the same thought, laughter, and inspiration without the ads. We know some of you have been asking for it, and now that we are going year-round, it made sense to offer it. So there's a link in the show notes. Sign up, and then you get Climbing Gold ad-free wherever you get your podcasts. It's super easy. Check it out.
You're a professional climber. You're, best boulder in the world, depending how you want to frame it. But you also work, right?
A little
Or
bit,
you
yeah.
have a job, or you had a job?
I do
little
have
bit?
a job. I should work more.
Yeah. Yeah, what do you do?
I'm a data person, so I'm like somewhere between a data engineer and a data scientist, or a lot of times I'm just sending emails. But I'm part of a data co-op, and we build an open source data pipeline to make federal energy data more accessible. And so it's like a completely open source project. We're half grant funded, half client funded. We basically ingest really hard to use spreadsheets from disparate, hard to reach sources, process it, do some stuff to it, and then republish it as a database.
And how do you balance that seemingly very technical work against bouldering, against like traveling and climbing nonstop?
I have very flexible hours, so
You ingest spreadsheets at your own schedule?
pretty much. I usually work a couple hours in the morning, and then I'll live my climbing life for like its complete cycle. And then at night, I'll restart my work and do a couple hours at night. And so I really only work part-time and sporadically. Like right now, I'm not traveling, so I'll do a little more work in the summers.
Does that balance work for you?
Right now, it feels like it works. Sometimes it feels like quite full on. Like sometimes it feels like life is passing me by a little bit.
What do you mean by life's passing you by?
Just I feel like much more busy. Like I feel like really kind of like tight in terms of my scheduling. Like especially like if I'm trying a boulder, like I'm like, I need to be at the boulder by a specific time. Like this call needs to wrap up now. Like I need to be done working now. Like,
Totally.
just
Totally.
kind of, I guess it's just the feeling of busyness that a lot of people feel. It feels like there's just no margin for error often. And I'd like to like just chill out more. I'm really not into hustle culture. So when I feel like I'm buying into it, I feel gross. But yeah, it works for now.
And where do you see going in the future? I mean, would you like to just climb, or would you like, do you aspire to do this kind of work indefinitely?
Yeah, I feel I'm trying to figure that out. I think I like could have the option to just climb, and I think actually I would derive a lot of meaning from that, and I don't think that I would be bored or like not be able to fill my time. I initially actually started working because I felt like it was important that I have impact in the clean energy space, because that was actually what my degree was, and I was highly motivated coming out of school to like join the movement at a really pivotal time for clean energy in 2021. And yeah, with recent federal policy changes, I've felt less motivated than ever. So I think I need to reevaluate like kind of how I measure my own impact and what that actually means to me. And it's an industry that I think is really exciting still, but potentially need to rethink my path forward with it.
Could you see a world that, like, basically, does your impact as a climber matter to you in the same way? Do you feel like you can have, as big of a personal impact in the world through climbing as you could through climate advocacy or the work you do as a data scientist?
Yeah, and I think actually that's something I've really been struggling with, is that, 4 years ago, like took a job as well as started climbing professionally, and felt like I had kind of siloed impact to the job side, and that was a means to justify climbing professionally. And, looking back over the last 4 years, I've had more impact through climbing than I have through my data work, I think. I mean, maybe that's bleak, but I actually feel like I've set myself up in climbing to be like in this pretty impactful position. And I think some of the stuff around box therapy, I had that realization that people actually are listening or watching or care about what I'm doing in climbing. And I also think about some of the climbers that I look up to, and it's actually wild to me like how much impact they've had on like my outlook in life. And that's not specifically, like them telling me to care about climate change, but more like the way that they treat their community and the way that they treat others, I think is like really impactful. So it's hard for me to feel like I made a mistake in some ways in thinking about my impact, but also it doesn't feel too late to like try to figure out how climbing can be the like avenue towards like feeling fulfilled and feeling like I'm doing the work I need to be doing to like, mitigate climate change.
Who are some of your heroes in climbing that you feel like you've gained things from?
Yeah, I think more recently I've been spending a lot of time with Beth Rodden. I'm actually in her house right now.
Oh, cool.
I just needed a quiet place to record. But it's kind of trippy thinking about like, I mean, I was never a trad climber, but I had a poster of Beth on my wall growing up. For whatever reason, like, her ascent of the nose and meltdown like meant something to me as like an 8-year-old gym climber, having like never been to Yosemite or like never had ambition to do the nose. It's pretty crazy to me to think about how like that actually did mean so much to me. And then to like meet her years later in my 20s and read her book and think about like everything that she's been through in climbing and really put that in perspective, like me now going through professional climbing and now going through like what it means to be like a woman pushing the level in climbing. I can like understand why my climbing reaches like broader audiences than just like the community of people who care about bouldering. Mm-hmm. I think representation, like it's so intangible, but it really does matter. And at its core, it's like the characters that we care about in climbing more than the actual like how like transferable the accomplishments are. And I'm sure you feel this too, like, you're probably going to be the only person to ever free solo El Cap, but like
surely not ever. Somebody will eventually.
Maybe. I guess probably.
I mean, it's only highball V7, like for you that's easy. It's like somebody will do that eventually.
But I mean, but your impact is your reach is wild, you know, like it's not like the community of free soloists that care about you. It's like the world.
Thanks to the Academy Award-winning film.
Yeah.
But it's interesting hearing you talk about Beth and talking about, you know, sort of your impact as a climber, because this kind of brings it full circle back to box therapy and the sort of, you know, I don't want to call it controversy, but the hullabaloo, you know, like the stirring the pot around that kind of stuff, is that in some ways, if you choose to be a public figure in climbing, you're also opening yourself up to all the drama, you know, the online criticism and just like the flurry of stuff. And I think Beth is a perfect example of like having just been in the limelight for so long. I mean, there's so much stuff surrounding her story, like in other people's opinions. And she's had to navigate a lot of sort of personal drama. I mean, you know, she just wrote her book and certainly she talks about that extensively in her book, like dealing with other people's expectations, other people's beliefs. Like, are you, you know, how do you feel about that? Because like you're suddenly entering this phase where you're like, well, you could do that. Like, do you want that? Or are you equipped to handle that?
Yeah, I mean, that is the craziest takeaway from Beth's book for me. And I think like that's kind of what hit hardest for me, was like hearing her talk about like kind of the criticism that she got, or like the scenarios that she ended up in, and being like, whoa, I don't know if I could have handled that. Like, that is crazy. And she was like so young, actually. So in my mind, it was like, oh, like most of her career happened like when she was in her 30s, but no, she was like literally 20. Like that.
Yeah, I mean, Kyrgyzstan, she was like 21 or something crazy. She was so young.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, for me, it was actually like this feeling of like, oh, like criticism is kind of like par for the course. And actually, like, I am kind of like blessed or lucky or privileged to be in this position where like so many people are weighing in on like my accomplishments. And there's a lot of like power that can come from kind of like not exactly being unfazed, but just kind of taking it and being like, well, I still feel this way, or I'm still going to like live my life in the way that I want to. And I think ultimately that's like what I found as the biggest takeaway from Beth's story, was like almost just letting all these things like kind of wash over her and just continuing onwards and like redefining what climbing meant to her and having that be meaningful. I kind of this feeling that if that's the takeaway from Beth's story, then maybe a lot of people can actually derive like some sort of through line through my climbing, even though like there's a lot of noise and there's a lot of like a hate and people who are skeptical of my like take on things. And I think it's important to just still be opinionated and still like have my own plot line here. So yeah, I think it's been helpful to come to terms with like the fact that being a public figure comes with a lot of downsides as well.
Yeah, actually, there are two things that I want to add. That one is like, I actually don't know if it's fair to say criticism, because it's not as if people criticize all the time, but it's just so much commentary. Like there's just so much noise around it, like positive and negative, and there's just everyone has an opinion, and you just have to like let those opinions wash off you like water off a duck. You know, you're just like, what else? Everyone's got their thing.
Totally. It's actually like the positive feedback is actually just as hard often.
Yeah, you have to ignore all that also. You're like, who cares? I'm just doing my thing.
Yeah.
But you actually said, you just mentioned sort of your plot line in climbing, and I'm curious, do you have a somewhat comprehensive vision of your climbing, or like what is the plot line of your climbing? Like where do you see yourself going? And I'm curious about that, just because I feel like I never had any kind of vision, you know, like literally I just love going climbing. Well, I mean,
really,
you know, I had some projects where it's like, oh, I want to do that for a couple of years, and I'm like working towards things, certainly free soloing El Cap. But in general, I'm just living in my car, climbing as much as I can, and like constantly looking for the next thing that I'm excited about.
Yeah.
You know, and now with 20 years of perspective, I can look back on it and be like, oh, you know, I was building towards these things. But at the time, you're just like, today I'm taking a rest day. Tomorrow, I'm trying my hardest. You know, it's like, I mean, day by day, you're just going climbing.
Totally. Yeah. No, I think I actually largely feel the same. And maybe it's important actually to not like try to stick to a plot too much.
Well, that's the thing. To a certain extent, you just have to be doing the thing and not like thinking about it too much. You just do that.
Right. Yeah. You just go out climbing. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think in the back of my mind, there's like a few things that it's not even like names and grades that I have in mind. It's more like I'd like to feel like I kind of left my mark in certain places, like Yosemite in particular. I like feel quite unfinished there, and just like wanting something more adventurous. And I think often when I was a kid, I would like look towards like what someone else was doing and be like, whoa, I hope that one day I can like get there, or one day like I can also do that boulder, that sport climb, whatever. And now I'm like more in a place where I'm kind of like, oh, I actually don't really see people like doing the things that I want to be doing, and that's kind of special. Like that feels like I worked pretty hard to get to the point where like I want to be the person that is making the first steps towards like what I think is cool.
You mean you've sort of outgrown your inspiration to some extent?
A little bit. I mean, maybe that's arrogant, but
No, that's totally fair. No, I don't think so. I mean, I literally, I do a lot of corporate speaking, embarrassingly enough, but I literally use like that line basically, because like with free soloing, it was totally that, where I have all these people I look up to, all these things that are amazing. I think that's incredible. And then at a certain point you do those things.
Yeah.
And you're like,
yeah.
Now I just do whatever I want. It's like, that's interesting. And it's like, yeah, at a certain point you just outgrow some of the dreams that you have when you're young.
Yeah, totally.
Or like some of the inspirations anyway.
Yeah. And then I think it's like a scarier, harder place to be in some ways, is like trying to figure out what's next when there's no like footsteps to follow in. But yeah, I think mostly like my ambitions like center around places or like feelings. And a lot of that I think actually like comes from like some of the feelings that I had like trying box therapy, actually, of just like, whoa, this is pretty wild that I'm like doing this, and kind of trying to figure out how to get that even from more roadside boulders or trad climbs or whatever.
Like what is that feeling? I mean, can you put a finger on it?
Yeah, I think like the feeling of like even a couple months previous, like looking at something on paper and feeling like that is wild to even think about, or like that's going to be heinous. Like, in March of 2023, thinking about hiking 12 miles in a day to like go try box therapy is like, I was like, oh God, like, I don't know, like maybe I'll do it once and then I'll hate it and never want to go back. And then like actually living the experience, like when you're in it, you're like, this isn't like, this is what I do. Like, I just like go and I do this. And yeah, sort of like challenging myself to like take on something that feels out of reach, not even in the way that it's heinous, but just like, oh wow, this boulder seems crazy. Like this is like so hard. Like I don't even know how to train for it. And then actually like living it and just seeing what happens, I think is like maybe how I'd encapsulate the feeling.
Yeah, I'm curious just from this conversation, obviously I don't know, but it seems like from this conversation that box therapy is maybe a more important milestone in your climbing than the dark side or other ascents that you've had, just in terms of personal growth and transformation. Is that fair, or is that just because we've been talking about it so much?
I think right now I would probably say that's true, but like it was more of I like don't like misusing the term paradigm shift, but it was more of like this kind of
personal breakthrough.
Yeah, not that the dark side didn't feel like that. Like I think I'm probably too close to the experience to like put my finger on it.
If you had to guess, what do you think you're going to remember about the dark side experience 10 years from now, let's say?
I think I'll probably remember, like, I felt like so dedicated to it. Like, I really just felt like it was gonna like ring me around and then I would see it through. And like that feeling of not actually being sure like at all when I would see it through or what the timeline on it was, just spending like a pretty absurd amount of mental space and time like thinking about the boulder and like physically being at the boulder. I think the crazier thing for me was that it really felt like I wasn't going to do it, which obviously is like probably this feeling that climbers talk about all the time in like pretty cliche ways, but it's interesting to like really be at 20 sessions deep on something, feeling like I'm not going to do it, even though it looks like I can do it, and like not being able to imagine getting to the other side, and like also being like totally ready to come back for another year or 2 years or whatever until it was over. Feels like the kind of more wild experience, I guess.
I think the one last question is like, with the dark side, did becoming the first woman to climb V16 this time, did it feel like a bigger deal, or did it feel like it just didn't matter? The second time around, like Like we look at these benchmarks in our sport, right? Big deal. Obviously, the first time everyone cares. You're sort of surprised by that. And then this time, like, what do you take away from that experience?
Definitely matters to me and to other people. I think probably people cared. I can't tell if people care less or if I'm more prepared than I was the first time when I thought nobody would care and everybody cared. But I think for me, like, I feel much more comfortable with the idea that like people view me as like, pushing the level of women's climbing and like view me as in some ways like a symbol of like how women's climbing has progressed or how women are catching up to men in climbing. And I feel like more comfortable with that role, even though I myself don't feel like I am that person. And like kind of being okay with the difference between like what public perception of my narrative is and like the way that I experience my climbing and my everyday life, and how I don't necessarily feel motivated by like trying to embody that role, but I am happy to be the fill in for it and to be kind of like what people look for when they are looking for progress and they're looking for how like women are interacting with this sport and how like women have carved out a place for themselves in this sport. So I'm trying not to like take on, that role or feel like I should find significance when in places where I don't think it's meaningful, but really am actually quite proud of the accomplishment and happy with how people have perceived it and like really grateful for the support, and just feel really lucky that I get to continue climbing every day and like have somehow ended up in this position.
Thanks, Katie, for sitting down to chat with us. We hope you keep leading the way. Hey, have you heard that you can get Climbing Gold ad-free? I know a few of you have been asking, so this year we've made that an option. We're calling it Climbing Gold Unroped. Get it delivered to all major podcasting platforms. We're grateful to our sponsors, but we also get wanting to have something without the ads. So you can sign up, link is in the show notes, check it out if you want it. Climbing Gold is created by Duct Tape Then Beer. Alex Honnold is our host. Our production team includes the talents of Skylar Perwins, Marco Seiler Gonzalez, and Evan Phillips. Our creative director is me, Fitzcahall. Today's music by Drexler and Brendan O'Connell. Will Taylor handles our ad sales. Our executive producers are Jonathan Retzik and Ben Endy for RXR Sports, and Lacey Hendricks and Becca Call for Duct Tape Then Beer. Thanks for listening.